Hi, I'm Pam, and this is my monthly update video letting you know everything that I was up to in the month of July. Hey everyone, I hope your summer is going well. Mine is going great so far. I've been pretty busy lately. Lily is kind of making an appearance, at least her part of her back end is. She's up on the couch with me, which she hasn't been on the couch while I've been recording for a while. She's been doing really well. She's been doing her physiotherapy and getting her arthritis shots, and her legs have been much better than they were a couple of months ago, so I'm very thankful for that. In terms of other updates, there was a new episode of Point and Drink Adventure, as usual. I think the last episode was pretty long and a little bit ranty. There was a few games we played that we ended up ranting about. We watched a lot of movies. Michelle showed off a bunch of her pickups and talked about being at Too Many Games last month, so check that out if you haven't listened already. So now on to pickups. I picked up a man. I came home one day. He was just here. Lily seemed to like him. So you might see Dylan in the back of streams sometimes.
Sometimes.
Most of the time. Yeah. He also brought with him more Nintendo games, so that's fun.
Not just Nintendo.
And Super Nintendo games.
And my Genesis tapes.
Your Genesis tapes aren't here yet.
Not here yet. They're coming.
Uh-huh. And a Steam Deck, which is fun.
That doesn't take up much space.
No.
Also, that's technically my laptop also.
But if we can get it docked to the TV, then I can play PC games on my couch, and maybe I'll play them more often.
Wait?
Yeah.
Or you could just like mobile gaming.
No, I hate mobile gaming.
Don't worry, guys. She's gonna love mobile gaming. Or I won't be here in a couple of episodes. Episodes? I'm a character now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Dylan. Alright, now let's get onto the games. I actually played a ton in July. Finished a bunch of games. I've been going really hard on Metroidvanias, I feel, because I've been wanting to remake my Metroidvania ranking video that I did a few years ago. The frame rate on that original video is garbage, and also I've played so many more, and I've decided that once I get to 100 Metroidvanias, I'm going to remake that ranking video. I'm at 94 now, I believe. So, but anyway, starting from the beginning of what I played, I was going through my Xbox and I found a couple games on sale, and these games were called 60 Seconds and 60 Parsecs. These are both by a developer called Robot Gentleman, and they're just the kind of like decision-making, resource management survival game that like completely get their hooks in me. So 60 Seconds was the first game they made, and it was remastered later on, I think in 2019. And there's sort of two components to this game. You start out in a house, you've got a sort of 3D environment to wander around, and an alarm's going off because nuclear bombs are about to drop, and you've got like 60 seconds to gather as much stuff from your house and bring it to your fallout shelter below your house. So you have decisions to make. Do you want to bring your family? Do you want to bring a bunch of water and food? Do you want to bring a flashlight or a rifle? So you just go through the house, pick up as much things as you can, toss them downstairs, and then phase 2 of the game starts, and that's where you're in your bunker, and every day you basically have to decide what to do. Are you going to eat some food and drink some water? Are you going to send someone out to explore the wasteland? And each time there's a chance of like a little event happening that you'll need to respond to. It'll depend on what items you have available to you, the decisions you make, a little bit of luck. I really enjoyed this. It's a game I got probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours out of it. I played it a few times through just to see the different paths that things could take, try to survive for as long as possible. I really liked it. The second game is called 60 Parsecs, which I liked just a little bit more. In this one, it's basically the same thing, except you start out on a space station. So again, you've got 60 seconds, you can grab other crew members, you can grab different items that are going to help you on your way, and then you get into a space shuttle and fly off in an attempt to find a new home and a new place to live. So I really like this one because it has a space component where you're just in the ship looking for either like signals or a planet, and then you'll usually end up in a planet, and then again, you can tell someone to go out on an expedition to a different location, find what you need there, maybe take some equipment that will help them, and you get little events every day that you need to figure out how to respond to, either by using an item or using someone's skills in order to deal with the event. And I really like this one as well. I thought the writing was just a little bit stronger and the space environment was more fun. It's not like the most active game, like it's not the most eventful game. It's basically just sort of like reading this description of what's happening, making a few decisions, doing your resource management, and sort of continuing on. But I just like fall into these games completely and will just play the hell out of them until I decide I'm done, and I did that with both of these. So yeah, if you like these kind of games, then 60 seconds, and even more so 60 parsecs were really good. The next thing I played was Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. This is developed by Metamorphosis Games, and it just came out mid-July, I think the 14th. I actually made a sponsored video on the game. I played through the entire thing before release and shared my thoughts on it. If you haven't seen that video, you should go check it out. But if you want some quick thoughts on the game, I thought that it was absolutely beautiful. It's a Metroidvania with really, really nice pixel art and really cool, like subtle animations all the way through it. It is a game that is on the shorter and easier side, which I kind of liked. It was a bit of a break after some more challenging games that I've been playing. So it wasn't overly challenging. I didn't die hardly at all, which was kind of actually nice, but I liked it. It had a cool combat of like range combat and melee combat. The platforming was fun, you know, lots of double jumping and air dashing and things like that. The story, it was a little heavy on story. There was a little too much dialogue for my taste, but overall I liked the game. It was fun to play with. It had really nice menus and UIs, a very big talent tree that you get to fill out to buff your character, and I thought it was a very solid Metroidvania. So the last thing I played over on Twitch on my Adventure Sundays was Broken Sword: Shadow of the Templars. This is the first game in the Broken Sword series. The original came out in 1996. It's by Revolution Games, Revolution Software, and they made a director's cut a fair bit later, like maybe 2009 or something. I played the director's cut, which is apparently fairly different. They made it impossible to die, which I kind of appreciated. They made some of the puzzles less obtuse, and that they made it so that you could play as the second character, Nico, whereas apparently the original, you could only play as the one character, George. So this is a strange one because I think everything about Broken Sword is well done. Like, it looks very nice. It's got like a very cartoony, almost Don Bluthy kind of art style. The puzzles, for the most part, made a lot of sense. They weren't overly obtuse. There were some code cracking puzzles, which I really liked. Some sliding puzzles, which I never enjoy, but not too many of those. I also thought that it was exceptionally well written. It had a dry sense of humor, and the voice acting was really good, even if sometimes the accents were off. But for some reason, I still found myself kind of bored most of the way through. And the problem is that there's just too much dialogue. Like, as good as the writing is, there are so many characters to talk to, and you can talk to all of them about anything. You can ask them about any topic. You can ask them about any of the items in your inventory. A lot of the time, you'll ask about something, like you'll ask them about the Templars, and you ask about it once, and then you have to ask about it again and again and again. And they have more new stuff to say every time, and it just gets to be a lot. It's strange because, like, it's very well written dialogue, but there just needed to be less of it, I found. I just found most of the time I would spend spans of like 20 minutes just sitting there talking to one single character when I wanted to be able to, you know, go do some exploring and puzzle solving. So it's strange. Like, I think it's a very well-made game. It just desperately needed an editor to sort of cut out a bunch of the content that just wasn't at all relevant or needed to the story. The next game I finished is one called Sundered, which I've had going for a number of months now. This is developed by Thunder Lotus Games. It came out in 2017. It is a Metroidvania with a very eldritch theme that has some procedural generation to it as well. This is a game that you can play co-op. I think you can actually play with up to 4 people. I've just been playing couch co-op with Dylan, and we finally managed to beat it. It's a really interesting Metroidvania. At first, I wasn't sure about the procedural generation. You start out sort of in a hub, and you can go one of 3 directions. And you do your exploring, you fight bosses, you get new abilities. And the important rooms, like the boss rooms and things, are always in the same place, but the sort of like connecting corridors between those rooms are randomly generated anytime you die. So like you can't really memorize the map so much, but you can see doors that you haven't gone in yet, or things that need an ability where you don't have access to it yet. So it was interesting because it kind of changed things up as it went, but had enough commonality to the map that you still felt like you were learning and you knew sort of where to go once you started getting new abilities. The abilities are very cool. I think there are 7 different abilities, and as you go, you have the choice to either corrupt the abilities or destroy these shards that you get. And based on those, it will completely change them. So when you corrupt an ability, it changes it and warps it in some way. So you could go through the game with a completely different set of abilities based on the decisions you make through the game. We were corrupting all of our abilities, and by the end of it, we were so good at moving. Like you could like spider up and down walls, you could like grapple hook onto things, you could like dash, sort of like force dash yourself like straight up into the air. It was just like movement made it feel like you were absolutely invincible because you just had so many movement options by the end of the game, and it felt really good to go through. Another big standout was the bosses. The main boss fights are incredible looking. They're all gigantic and your characters are fairly small, so it does like zoom out quite a bit so that you can get the perspective and like the scale difference between the size of the boss and the size of your characters. They all just look really cool too, and they're very fun boss fights. Overall, I really liked this. I found I liked it more as I went, as I sort of learned the map and started to appreciate how the map changed every time. There's also a very large talent tree and different perks that you can equip that allow you to like buff some stats while some others might get a little bit debuffed. Just lots of choices to make on exactly how you want to build your character. But yeah, if you like sort of eldritch looking Metroidvanias with very cool movement, also if you're looking for something that you can play couch co-op with a friend, then I definitely recommend Sundered. Next game I played is another brand new one. It's called Nobody Wants to Die, and it is developed by Critical Hit Games. It just came out, again, mid-July. And this is a noir detective game. It looks very Blade Runner-y, like the atmosphere and the music, the visuals looks very, very influenced by Blade Runner. This takes place in a world where people are basically immortal. A few hundred years ago, they made body swapping a thing that could happen. So yeah, obviously that went bad. So there's like a subscription service. You have to pay for your body. If you can't pay for it, you lose your body. So the rich people, when they get old and they die, they can like basically take their essence out of their brain and just put it into a new body. So they can ostensibly live forever if they can keep purchasing themselves new bodies. And you are a police officer who used to be a Major League Baseball player, and he gets in on this case where someone has died. It's one of the people who sort of initiated the whole body swapping immortality thing. And of course, it leads into a big conspiracy of exactly what's happening. This is definitely one where the atmosphere is the big draw. It looks absolutely beautiful. The soundtrack is this amazing jazzy soundtrack. The gameplay is, a lot of walking and talking to your sort of handler that you have who's helping you with the case. and then using cool gadgets to sort of recreate scenes that have happened. So you have to find clues, and then you can use like your UV light or your X-ray to follow things around. One of the more annoying parts about it was that as you're finding clues, sometimes it was just about like positioning your body and the camera exactly right to get the view that you needed, which wasn't the most interesting thing, but the story was solid. Yeah, just the atmosphere again was like the biggest, coolest thing. Like everything just looked amazing. There was a sort of holographic deduction board thing to figure out what was happening in the various murder cases. Overall, I liked this one. It was around maybe 5 or 6 hours long, which was the perfect length for this kind of game. Yeah, if you're looking for something a little bit different, like I'd say it's like kind of walking simmy, but more interaction than your general walking simulator with the like detective aspect to it. But I really liked Nobody Wants to Die. I thought it was interesting and kind of unique. The last game I finished is called Xeodrifter. This is by Renegade Kid. It came out in 2014 originally, and this is a very mini Metroidvania. And I got this game a number of years ago, and I started it and kind of bounced off it quickly. And I just thought about it again recently because someone in the Discord had mentioned it, and it made me wonder, like, did I not like playing it because it was on Switch and I don't like playing on Switch, or did I not like the game? And as I went back to it, I realized kind of both, but I still ended up finishing the game. You just play a little guy. It's very simple, pixelated graphics, and there's 4 different planets that you can go to. And you sort of just go to a planet, explore it, maybe fight a boss. If you fight a boss, you get a new ability that you can use. For such a small game, like I think it's maybe 2 or 3 hours long, it was quite repetitive. Like each of the planets has a very small map to explore. There are some secrets where you can find power-ups to your health and your weapons. And obviously things that you need new abilities to explore. So sometimes you have to do jumping between the planets to get them all explored. But the boss fight, there's basically one boss fight. It's always the same boss model. It just sort of gains a new ability in each iteration. The music gets pretty repetitive. The jump is something that drove me crazy because there's only one height of jump. So it doesn't matter if you tap the button or if you hold the button, this guy is always going to jump the exact same height, which made controlling it a little bit awkward. I also found it a little too fast and slippery on the controls. Like it was sometimes difficult to make a jump onto small platforms because you overshoot it or slide right off of it. It did have some interesting abilities. One was a phase shift. So in the levels, there were often like a foreground and a background, and you could sort of switch between the two to get around obstacles. And that was pretty neat. But in terms of everything else, I just found it not overly interesting, and it got repetitive. I didn't like the music at all. I just found it was just very like meh. I really only finished it because it was so short, and I always felt like I was very close to finishing it. But overall, I can't say that I recommend this one. I also retired 2 other Metroidvanias. The first is called Blast Brigade versus the Evil Legion of Dr. Creed, which is quite a mouthful. This is by Alod's Team Arcade. It came out in 2021. And this is a sort of run and gun platformer Metroidvania. It's got a spy theme. You start as one particular character, and then you can open up new characters, each of which has different abilities to help you traverse the world. You're going after this guy, Dr. Creed, on this island that you're exploring. And overall, I did think this was actually a pretty solid game. I was enjoying my time with it. The problem was that midway through the game, I picked up The Last Faith, and I got so into The Last Faith that I completely forgot about Blast Brigade, and by the time I went back to it, I was kind of like, where was I going? What was I doing? How do I play this again? And I was just having a hard time like getting back into it in the middle of the game. So it's really not its fault. that I'm retiring it. I also think this is a pretty solid Metroidvania, and I would have gotten all the way through it if I had not just played through an entire different one in the middle of it. But yeah, it's got like bright cartoony graphics, and I think it's pretty good. I just kind of lost interest through no fault of its own. And the other one I decided to retire is called Cookie Cutter. This is by Subcult Joint. It just came out at the end of last year. And this is a very bright and colorful, kind of punky Metroidvania. You play an android, and at the beginning of the game, your creator, who you're also in love with, gets captured by someone who looks a lot like Marilyn Manson. And you go after her, and you're just basically exploring different areas. This is sort of a brawler in terms of the combat. There's combos, there's like light attacks and heavy attacks, and you can like punch things in different directions. I liked the game pretty well. Like, my opinion kind of started here and then just sort of went down as I played. One of the biggest problems was that I felt the controls were quite loose. Like, I couldn't depend on them to do what I wanted them to do. There's executions when enemies get low on health, but there's often so many enemies so close to you that like the execution prompt will pick up, and I'll press Y and it won't execute. It'll just do a heavy attack on something else. I found some of the, even like the platforming was a little bit sketchy. And at the beginning of the game, it didn't really matter so much. And then I got to a point where there was insta-kill spikes, and that made it way more annoying and made the loose controls kind of much more unforgivable. So I did end up sort of quitting during this big platforming gauntlet full of insta-kill spikes, and I tried it a few times and decided I just did not have the patience for it. But it's very bright and colorful. Some of the abilities are cool. You get like different super weapons, like there's a fist and a guitar and a chainsaw, and that opens up different parts of the level. So it definitely has its good points, but the loose controls are kind of a death sentence, especially when things start to get tougher in terms of the platforming and the boss fights. Also, everything kind of started to look the same after a while. Like, all the environments are kind of like a machinery inside kind of environment. Like, there wasn't anything like outdoors with like cool nature or anything, at least that I saw so far. I got at least halfway through the game, so I feel like I saw a decent amount of it. But yeah, Cookie Cutter, yeah, started off pretty good, and then all of the little things just started adding up. It also wouldn't save my my rebindings of buttons that would reset every time I started the game. There was no way to mark the map. There was no legend for the map. Just like all these little things just kind of piled on top of each other until I didn't want to play anymore. So that is it for my July updates. Played a ton of games. Let me know in the comments what you've been playing, if you got any cool pickups you want to share with me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. If you want to see more, check out another one of my videos here. I have a Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.